So we're here with Dr. Michael Witbrock, computer scientist, AI researcher, entrepreneur. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I'm sorry that you're not feeling so great today.
Well, that's right.
Yeah,
I'll make it through the interview.
Yeah, great. You're on the mend. So, Michael, you spent many years at Cycorp. It looks like nearly 15.
Yes.
Nearly 15 now. And you worked with Dr. Doug Linnett, who started Cycorp back in 1984.
That's right.
Way back. This is basically like the dinosaur age of personal computers. It's a long time ago. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience working for Cycorp, a respected artificial intelligence company for that long? And
I think that Cycorp has been sort of an amazing company. It was through all the AI summers and winters and summers again and winters again.
Yeah.
It kept the idea of making a general artificial intelligence to sort of expand human capabilities, and a particular way of doing that, this based on automated reasoning and logic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it was right to do it. I mean, there are two great schools of artificial intelligence research. There's statistical machine learning, and there's knowledge representation and reasoning. Mm-hmm. And recently, of course, statistical machine learning has been making enormous progress after a very long winter. Mm-hmm. But I think that the short-term progress for the near future will come from uniting both those types of reasoning. I think Cycorp has, by its persistence, placed itself in a position to contribute greatly to that.
Nice. Well, as we do sort of have that unification of these different disciplines of artificial intelligence, do you see us like maybe approaching general artificial intelligence, talking like human-level artificial intelligence in the next 5 years?
I don't think we'll approach human-level artificial intelligence in the next 5 years.
Okay.
What I think will start to happen, though, is that you'll see systems like Siri and Google now and Facebook and even Slack, all sorts of systems start to engage in what are genuinely conversational interactions. Mm-hmm. So they'll be in a limited domain, but they will be very general and they'll be fluent. Right? Mm-hmm. They will actually understand what you say and they will respond to you naturally.
And I noticed the names that you'd used, Google, Facebook, Siri, and that sort of thing. Is it because there's such a large user base or potential user base and a large amount of money to be thrown at that?
Exactly. That's why there's some short-term, I don't think all the progress will come from there, but there's some short-term progress which will come there. I used to work in speech recognition, and around 2001, 2002, I noticed that the speech recognition systems were becoming usable enough that I was starting to use them.
Oh, wow.
And what that means is that all of a sudden the data is beginning to come for free, right? And then it's just a matter of computation time. And as you've seen, speech recognition has become very good. I think it's approaching human level now. I've had a prediction for about 2 years now that within 5 years, so I've got 3 more years left, that speech recognition will be reliably superhuman, and I have no doubt that that prediction will come true.
Wow, that's very exciting. And I feel like Siri does a pretty decent job at understanding me. I think that she just has a problem executing any of my requests, and that's probably a different problem altogether.
Right, I don't actually use Siri. I use, I have an Android phone. I use Google, and frankly, I'm astounded how quickly it gets better, both at speech recognition, where it's almost error-free now, and in the likelihood that it will be able to execute actions. I mean, it's not general yet. It's not even good enough that you can be confident that it will do what you ask it to do, but it's good enough that there's a realistic hope that it might do what you ask it to do, and that alone is sort of astounding from the point of view of someone who started doing AI in the 1980s.
Yeah, it's come a super long way from like Dragon naturally speaking. Yeah,
exactly.
So would you say that Cycorp is working to build the equivalent of common sense for the AI world? I was doing a little reading, the ontology and the sentiment recognition and that sort of thing, and working toward that. Is that what you say it's going? Or
Right, so there are kind of two types of thinking that people do. There's what Daniel Kahneman calls System 1 thinking. It's this fast thinking, like recognizing objects and so forth. And there's the System 2 thinking, slow thinking, which is careful, deliberate thought, the sort of thought that we're engaging in as we have this conversation. And that sort of thinking is the superpower of human beings, right? Other animals simply do not really do that kind of thought, and the fact that we can do it at all has given us dominion over the world, right, so to speak. Right. So what you require for that sort of thinking at the moment in machines is systems based on logic and knowledge representation, and in order to have systems carry out reasoning using logic, you need some very carefully constructed representations of facts about the world, which are somewhat different from the way that we would express them to other people. And that is what Psych has been engaged in building, that large base layer of knowledge about how the world works so that it can be automatically computed about using logic.
Nice. It's I guess the same way that I, teach my kids. They're now 10 and 13. Like just daily training about how the world works. I guess it's the same.
Exactly. It's like, for example, reading simple stories about the world and then working out, all right, what's entailed by that statement. When I say, for example, Joe's friends pushed hard against the window because it was stuck until it opened. Right. There's a model of how windows work, which is inherent there, right? That when you push against the window, you're pushing. It's probably the sort of window which rotates to open, right?
Right.
You understand that?
Right.
That it's unlatched, right? That windows often get stuck because of paint, that it's often possible to dislodge them, that they're probably not actually pushing against the glass,
right.
That they're probably pushing against the frame, that there is a frame with glass in it, and that they are probably not pushing as hard as they possibly can, because that would lead to disaster or perhaps someone falling out.
Yeah.
Right? All of those things are sort of background knowledge which are based on our model of how the world works. And in order for a system based on logic to do that reasoning, it has to have in its own knowledge representation formalism that sort of knowledge as well, and that's what building Psych has been all about.
And I'll have another question related to that here in a second, but before I do, what you just discussed is a pretty big undertaking. I mean, it's a problem that Psych and you yourself have been working on since the pre-internet days, right?
Yes.
I mean, do you feel like that it's ramping up? Do you feel like you're making good headway with this? Or?
I'm not quite old enough to predate the internet, or at least I wasn't working on AI when the internet first was switched on.
Okay, all right.
But yes, more or less. Sorry, I was distracted by that calculation. Being a geek, of course, that sort of thing is a challenge. So what was the question again?
No, that's fine. And so I'll say this. Then Psych has been working on this problem, and I don't know if they're using the methodologies that you're talking about today. I can't imagine they were in '84, but I imagine this is all unfolding over the decades. And do you feel like the good headway is being made in creating this foundational intelligence?
Yeah, I think that good headway has been made. With respect to creating a sort of general human level intelligence, we're not there yet, but there are sort of a large class of problems which can't be solved by writing a conventional program because the nature of the problem is too heterogeneous, right? So you just can't afford to write all of the possible paths for it.
Right.
And then there's another class of problems which can be solved. So there is a class of problems which can be solved by writing programs. There's another class of problems which can be solved and which it's worth to solve by having human beings work on them.
Right.
But there are quite a large number of problems in between those which we simply have no way of really solving at the moment. And what I do think is that Psych is at a stage now where it can be applied to solving those sorts of problems. And there are problems in finance, there are problems in healthcare which have exactly that nature. They are too heterogeneous to write the program for them using a human, right? And they're too individually, they're too low value to solve with a human being, right? But if you can have a computer which is simultaneously searching for the data to solve the problem and the method for solving the problem, which is exactly what an automated reasoning system like Cyc does, then there's a very real chance that you can solve it. And that's why I think that the opportunity that Lucid's pursuing now to commercialize this very long-term project is going to succeed. I think it's going to be a very good business.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It seems that common sense, quote unquote, is the essential foundation for general AI, and that it will need to be built on. And I read a recent article of yours called Deep Learning, Deep Reasoning, and Dense Models. And in it you propose a challenge. You said, quote, the time is ripe for a 5 to 10 year AI challenge problem in production of dense models directly from data and pre-existing background knowledge bases. And by that you mean YouTube and just, I guess, the internet in general, right?
Right.
I thought this was brilliant, and as your challenge example, you said the kitchen, right? Basically build a dense model of the kitchen. Would you say that this dense model challenge is going to help us to build that common sense foundation that we need to improve and move toward general AI?
Yes, and that's exactly what it's about. It's about producing from data and from background knowledge, a complete model of what goes on in kitchens. So a general artificial intelligence about kitchens. So that, for example, you can show it a picture of a bunch of ingredients and say what might be going to be cooked, or you can show it a video with a gap cut out of the middle and say what probably happened in that gap, right? Or is someone here are these ingredients, is someone going to be able to make a blancmange, right? And they'll say, well, not with those ingredients, but there's probably eggs in the fridge.
Nice.
Right? That's the sort of reasoning that you ought to be able to do, and that you ought to be able to learn to do directly from the many years, decades of kitchen videos that are on YouTube.
I think you said it was like 22 years worth of kitchen video.
Well, there was some estimation, but yes, I'm that's assuming that the videos which talk about kitchens and cooking are only 1 minute long each.
Okay.
Then there's 22 continuous years of them.
Wow.
So there's probably a lot more.
Yeah. Now, is there anyone that you want to call out specifically to raise this challenge to? And say, Google, see if you can solve. You own YouTube, do it.
Well, there are some obvious people who might try to address this challenge. Google's one, especially the DeepMind guys.
Yeah.
Cycorp actually could try this. IBM, it's been a little while since they last won one of these major challenges.
Yeah.
Microsoft, right? I mean, Facebook is now one of the biggest AI research companies in the world, and I think, and given that their domain is people's everyday lives, this sort of learning of deep models ought to be of great interest to them. So I'm not directing at any particular person. I think that the whole community can approach parts of this challenge, people in universities, but also the people in very large companies.
So the challenge is out there, world. Everyone who's involved with artificial intelligence, with machine learning, we're talking to you, Mark Zuckerberg, we're talking to you, Facebook, we're talking to you, Microsoft, we're talking to Google, to anyone who has the interest in taking on this challenge, this AI challenge. Do yourself a favor and go read Michael's article, Deep Learning, Deep Reasoning, and Dense Models. Take that challenge and help us reach that goal of 5 to 10 years. Michael, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you very much for talking with me.
All right, take care.